All season, we've been waiting for one team to separate themselves from the rest of college football. That one team that we can point to and say, this is the leader, and everyone has to catch them, and it's going to be tough. Now, multiple teams have had that opportunity so far in 2024, yet nobody has truly taken advantage of it. But for Texas, that's what this weekend is as they host Georgia. Quinn is back healthy. The Longhorns are pretty much at full go. Their two biggest wins of the year so far have come against teams that lack any semblance of balance offensively. That's obvious to everyone. Michigan and Oklahoma can't hurt you through the air. Now, that isn't to take away from the Longhorns' dominance in both of those games, because they truly did. But this weekend against the Dogs, they are going to play a team that can hurt you both ways and does have a semblance of balance. Now, Georgia doesn't seem as dominant as they have been in the past because, well, they aren't. But if Texas passes this test with flying colors, they will firmly grasp onto the top spot in the sport, with Oregon nipping at their heels, I will say that. The cry will go from, "Is Texas back?" to "Texas is here to stay." And in a college football world full of parity and uncertainty, this weekend could catapult Texas into the driver's seat. Now, let's break this game down from a granular and fundamental standpoint. Former Michigan quarterback David Cohn to my left, former Western State Colorado wide receiver Blaine Crain to my right. David, and again, there's a long way to go, and I don't want to take away from what Oregon did beating Ohio State, because that was a really nice win. But if Texas goes out and dominates this weekend, and really, they don't have to beat Georgia by 40 points, but we look at that game and say Texas dominated it throughout. This is the most complete team in college football, because that's what I think the argument is. Not that they have the best offense in the country, or that they have the best defense in the country, or they have the best special teams in the country. It's that they could have the best combination of the three, and that's what we've been waiting to see.
Yeah, well, the way college football is going this season, forget winning with a blowout. Just go win by 1 point, and you'll be able to make your case. I mean, we circled this game as soon as the schedule came out a long time ago, and the stakes are just as high now as they ever were, because I agree with you. Texas with a win has a chance to, they're already the number one team in the country. They have a chance with a win to pull away at least from the rest of the conference, right? Georgia, on the other hand, has a chance to climb back in this thing and sort of alleviate a little bit of what happened with that loss against Alabama. And the way college football is going right now, Georgia would win this game, right? So everything's like back to square one. I do think Georgia has one thing going for it in this game, and that's that we haven't seen Texas play a team yet that's really good on both sides of the ball. You can't say that about Michigan. Solid defense. They didn't pose any threat on offense. Same with Oklahoma this past weekend. The game was going exactly how Oklahoma needed it to in that first quarter, and they're up 3-0. Unfortunately, you have to do that times 4 against a team like Texas. Now, I do think Texas, just right now from what I see, is better than what Georgia is. And I was surprised, I have to say, to watch Carson Beck throw the football 48 times against Mississippi State this weekend. That seems like a lot when you're playing a team like that. But at the same time, say what you will about Georgia and where they are at least a balanced football team. I think they'll be the most balanced football team that Texas has played up to this point. To me, what this game's going to come down to is which coach makes the adjustments in the second half. We saw Kirby Smart be able to do that in the Alabama game. There's only so much you can game plan for against Steve Sarkisian going in. You have to get a look on the field, see what he's doing. Same thing on the reverse side of that. Which coach is able to make the adjustments in the second half to be able to give their quarterback the football late?
And not even that, David. I would be shocked if Georgia came out as down as they were against Alabama. I don't
think we'll see that again for the rest of the season.
I don't think we will.
That was
either.
As bad as it gets.
It is. That's what was so amazing about them being able to come back. And when you talk about making halftime adjustments, I love matchups where you have two great offensive minds as head coaches, but the best type of matchup you can get, if you're really a nerd about this stuff the way that we are, is a brilliant offensive mind like Steve Sarkisian going against a brilliant defensive mind like Kirby Smart. And I know they have coordinators underneath them. I want to make sure and give those guys credit. But these guys have seen each other many times. Remember when Sark was at Bama? Like, they know each other. This is a very, very close connection. So I'm very interested to see the way that Georgia may come out and give some multiple fronts that gave Quinn Ewers some problems against Oklahoma. But Blaine, going to the Georgia side, when you look at now, and I want to project a little bit down the road and think as a Georgia fan would, this game is massive. We know that, right? You don't have to have anybody convince you of that. But now that Ole Miss has 2 losses and they get to host Georgia, Ole Miss has to win out to make the playoff. There's no question about that. Jackson Dart talked about it. If you're a Georgia fan, you want to win this game, obviously, because if you don't, that third loss that could happen at Ole Miss in a game that could truly be a must-win, I mean, that it just raised the stakes even higher.
Yeah, I mean, this is Georgia. This is huge for you to win this football game, especially after Ole Miss losing. The only other ranked team you have in your schedule will be Tennessee, and that game will be at home. But I think we have to be honest about this Georgia football team. This is a finesse football team. I've said it for multiple weeks. We're used to a Georgia team that is run to pass. With all the NFL offensive linemen they have walking into this year or last year, they were a run-to-pass football team. Now you're seeing a finesse Georgia team. And there's nothing about when you brought this up, I don't trust Georgia on defense. I don't know why you would. You have NFL players running around. I get that. You gave up 31 against Mississippi State, which is a bad football team. The one legitimate offense that you played other than Clemson early in week 0 is Alabama, and you gave up 41. I know we saw in the second half, didn't do a lot. But right now, you look at Texas, I think this will come down to is who defense shows up. Like, if you want to separate yourself in college football right now, I think defense is what will separate you. Look at the best right now. Oregon, I mean, okay on defense, not great. Ohio State, okay on defense, not great. Alabama, not great on defense. And Georgia, what I've seen so far, it's not great on defense. I've seen a Texas team, Quinn Ewers, struggle when he came back early. He's been out for multiple weeks, and he finally figured it out. One big thing I will look at is injury report. Is Isaiah Bond healthy for this game? Went out last week against Oklahoma early in the second quarter, I believe.
I think he's going to play.
If he plays and he's healthy, I mean, I like Texas in this game. But right now, if you're Georgia or if you're looking at this game from the periphery on the outside, what do you feel great about?
Well, and I get what you're saying, and I take the Mississippi State game with a little bit of a grain of salt because I went back and watched it, and Georgia should have been better. I'm not trying to make excuses for them, but they were very, very vanilla in what they did, and it seemed like as disciplined of a team on the field as Kirby Smart usually has, it does feel like they were looking ahead a little bit. So I don't want to put too much stock in that Georgia-Mississippi State game. What I will say is it's not just about saying, all right, well, Georgia's not this or Texas isn't that or they are. It's the capability in one game. I think sometimes analysts and people in the sports media world get so caught up in a result of one game that they don't look through the entirety or see the good parts too. I saw Georgia make adjustments and shut down Alabama's offense, which is still really good, and I tell you this all the time, in the second half. I think Georgia's going to put their best foot forward in this game. But I think Texas is going to put their best foot forward in this game. And when we're looking at personnel, at least for me, I think Texas is more physical than Georgia. I think Texas has better players overall on this roster from a special teams, offensive, and defensive standpoint than what Georgia has on their roster. I think Texas could bully Georgia. I think Georgia could have a great game plan going into this game defensively, to mix the fronts, to be exotic, to not be afraid to run stun against Texas. But Texas just has better players overall on the line of scrimmage in this game, David. I think that's what, to me, the reason I opened with it, is what could separate Texas from everybody else, is that they are the most complete team from roster to execution on the field in all three phases.
You said one thing in there that I do agree with. Both teams will well, I agree with multiple things, but the thing I'm honing in on is that both teams will put their best foot forward. I truly think that's what we'll see. Not that Georgia didn't play as hard as they possibly could against Kentucky. I'm not saying that. I just think that we're going to see the best version of both these teams. And if Texas ends up winning by 14, then the proof's just going to be in the pudding,
does it worry you at all that during the Alabama-Georgia game, which that game was at Alabama, that Georgia came out and looked like that?
A ton of things.
So
you're you made a point in that live stream at Innisfree that Carson Beck just played his way out of the first round, and I agreed with you. And then everybody was like, well, he threw for 400 yards in the second half. I don't care. There are things that hit from his performance in that first half that still stick in my mind, that bother me, and that's just when we get to the draft later in the year. Forget the rest of the college football season we have to play out. So, yeah, I'm worried about all sorts of stuff. I mean, and I'm not taking Georgia as we sit here right now. I just do think that what Jake's point is, we will see the best version of both these teams. I think we'll see the type of Georgia team that can do what Oklahoma did in that first quarter, make things really ugly and scrappy against Texas, but do it for a little longer. Can they do it for 4 quarters?
And they can score.
I don't know. And hey, say what you will about Mike Bobo calling plays, and I'm from Georgia, so I've heard it my entire life that his play calling is too vanilla and he's not creative. They're throwing bombs every play this season.
And Blaine, to your point, though, and why I see what you're saying, because that is, quote unquote, the biggest game that Georgia's played all year. The Clemson game to open was a big one. And I thought, that they showed us some things in that Clemson game, especially you look at the way Clemson's playing now. But is there not a part of you that thinks Georgia, number one, their personnel's too good to probably make that mistake again? And since they've already made that bad mistake of starting out so poorly, they can fix it now. It'd be different to me if Georgia didn't have the guys to fix it. I can sit here and give Charlotte the best game plan possible, or I can give FIU the best game plan possible. But we go play Ohio State, they're just going to whip our ass because gravity is gravity and physics is physics. I don't think Georgia's going to make that same mistake twice. Not that they're going to win the first half or that they're going to come out and look like world beaters against Texas. I just don't think they're going to be caught on their heels as much. And they went on the road and played Bama. So any of the new guys that played on the road, this isn't going to be shocking to them. I actually think it lessens the likelihood that Georgia comes out and plays that bad because they already did it against Alabama.
Yeah, and I get what you're saying. But one thing that would scare me if I'm a Georgia fan is, a lot of this game, what it's going to come down to is going to be a line of scrimmage football game. You can dress it up as many times.
Oh, you're damn right on that.
Can you get pressure on Quinn Ewers? Mm-hmm. Can you run the football? Because the winner of this game will be the yardage and the percentage will be better in the running game. I know Texas can line up with that offensive line and run it against anybody in the nation. I can't say the same thing about Georgia.
No, well, see,
Carson Beck threw it 50 times against Mississippi State. That's not going to win you this game.
Yeah. Well, and you said it, in this matchup at least, Georgia is quote-unquote the more finesse team than what Texas is. We can get in the schematic details of, what would you do here? How much 11 personnel would you get in? How much 12 personnel would you get in? How many times are you going to go empty? But I can tell you what I think is going to happen. I think Sarkisian is going to try and run it at Georgia until they prove they can stop it. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of what Sark builds his offense on is what all the smart play callers do. It's what Lincoln Riley does. It's what Heupel does, is you build it off play action, right? You build it off play action and being able to stay ahead of the schedule because you are running the ball and getting into 2nd and 4s. And you're into 3rd and 2s. And you're able to not pitch backwards, but really pitch forwards. Run it to pass it, and then you know what? Halfway through the drive, if it's 1st down and 10 and you've been lining up in 12 personnel and you're just running counter and power and ISO and gap scheme down their throat, that's when you line up in 12 personnel. That's when you put Isaiah Bond on the edge. That's when you go play action, and that's when you take your shot. So Sark is going to run it at Georgia until they prove they can stop it, and then he'll give you the lollipop reverse and this, that, and the other. On the other side, I don't think Georgia can line up and run the ball at Texas. I think they are truly going to have to pitch backwards. I think Mike Bobo knows that. I think Carson Beck knows that. I think most of the smart Georgia fans know that. Now, if they come out and run the ball, that's great. It's going to make it easier. But do not be surprised at all if you see Texas come out in heavier personnel and look like what Georgia used to look like, and that Georgia looks like what Texas used to look like,
crazy.
Throwing the ball all around. It's a
midlife crisis for a lot of teams we didn't expect. Literally for Georgia. When would we talk about Georgia being finesse football?
I know.
Right? Alabama, Tennessee. When would we talk about a Tennessee team that's struggling extremely bad on offense, that's really good on defense? Flip it to the other side. An Alabama team who is bad on defense and extremely good on offense. It's just it's the upside down. We're in stranger things.
Okay, and so that's why I said earlier that the most college football in 2024 thing that could happen this weekend is for not only for Georgia to come out and beat Texas, but for them to be the more physical team.
Yeah.
And then we're back at square one. Like, that's what I keep thinking. Like, anytime you think you have a sure thing, you don't have one. And I'm looking at this like, man, maybe Georgia completely resets the conversation by winning. And there's a couple other things they have going for them, particularly on the defensive side of the football. One, they won't have to game plan for Texas the same way they did against Jalen Milroe with his ability to escape the pocket. They're not going to have to do that. Two, Quinn Ewers did not look good at the beginning of that game.
No, he did not.
Oklahoma. I know he came back strong and they won big and all that kind of stuff. He looked very, very bad in the first quarter of that game. I know he's coming back from injury, but at least for Georgia on defense, that's something to build off of and say, hey, he'll throw us the football. Let's make him throw us the football. And the third thing is, and I hate to even put it in the universe, but like, he's gotten injured in big games before. Yep. And if Quinn Ewers goes down and Arch Manning comes in, I think the conversation it's not completely different because your point of lining up in 12 personnel and running it at him is still, no matter who's the quarterback, you can still do that. But the conversation does become a little different.
No, it doesn't. And really the thing on the flip side of it, that if you're a Texas fan, that there's two, or that would kind of worry me a little bit, is Georgia, and this goes back to the being more balanced on offense. We're not saying that Georgia's incredibly balanced, but as a team, they're more balanced than a lot of teams that Texas is
more than Michigan and Oklahoma.
There's more pathways for Georgia to win this game than there was for Michigan or Oklahoma.
True.
Playing against Texas. And if I'm a Texas fan, I want to put context around this. Does the Tennessee track kind of scare me a little bit? What do I mean by that? Well, we watched Tennessee with this ballin'-ass defense, right? Go out there and play really well. The offense was exploiting teams they were better than. The Oklahoma game, they just kind of played it a little bit safer offensively, didn't put Nico in those situations. I know that Quinn Ewers and Nico are two different players that are in two different circumstances. But if I'm a Texas fan, am I a little bit worried that just like when Texas, played Michigan, you look at Tennessee and Oklahoma, that'd be kind of a low-scoring game. You really don't know yet, is what I'm saying. Like, could we be sitting here gassing up Texas like, hey, we think they're the most complete team, they're the most balanced team or whatever, and then they come out and offensively they're not what we thought they were, and we get another 24-21 or 20-17 type game where Georgia's able to hang around and Carson Beck can find a way to the end. Not that Tennessee and Texas are unbelievably similar. They're not at the quarterback position, but when you look at team archetypes up to this point, right? When Tennessee got thrown into the fire, we found out, hey, they may not be what we really thought.
I think the difference in that is Quinn Ewers.
It's okay.
It's got to be Quinn Ewers, right? Because I think you can look at Tennessee, and we were right about a lot of things. That defense is really good. They have talent receiver, and they're really damn good at running the football. Nico's been a bust so far. You can sit here and say what you want. Nico has been a bust so far, and you're still winning games. I mean, that's how good your roster is at Tennessee, especially that defense. You're still winning football games. But Quinn Ewers, we know about Quinn Ewers.
I say that. Yeah, we say that.
You've seen Quinn Ewers ball out in big games.
I have, but I've also seen him get injured in big games early, and I've seen him lose big games. That's why I thought Texas's win with Quinn Ewers at Alabama last year was so impressive, because we talked about the ability for Jalen Milroe to run, and Quinn Ewers can't. It didn't hurt him because he extended the plays in the pocket. But again, the Georgia defensive line, this is what the game's going to come down to. Can you stop the run? Because if you can't, Sark is going to gut you like a fish next to a dock. All right? And the second thing is, can you get to Quinn Ewers? Why did Texas beat Alabama last year? Because Quinn Ewers' jersey was as clean when he walked out of Bryant-Denny as when he walked into.
And Oklahoma sacked him on the first play of this past.
I know.
But last year, I think they had 5 sacks against him. Washington had multiple sacks in the college football playoff game. The one game that throws a monkey wrench in all this that we're talking about is Georgia's opener against Clemson. Because if they didn't have that, if they just opened against Georgia State and beat them bad, obviously it'd be a lot tougher to prop Georgia up in this game.
Or if Clemson looked awful going.
Or that, of course. But Clemson looks great now moving forward. Didn't against Georgia. That's what, to me, I just keep thinking, man, maybe we're in for a close game.
And I hope we are, because, we had some absolute gangbuster games last weekend. Just to put it quickly, because we got to move on. If this college football season was directed by a movie director, it would be M. Night Shyamalan.
Yeah.
100%, because it's twist after twist after twist. Hey, what's up, YouTube? Do us a favor. A lot of y'all been subscribing. We appreciate that. We love y'all. We feel y'all. It's real. If you haven't yet, please hit that subscribe button and keep sharing the show.